I have no idea what you, the viewers, think the 5 most important dance or techno records are of all time, but I'm gonna let you know what mine are today, and then we can have it out. Hello, Internet. Chris Cline here with Alma Music Center in San Antonio. How are you doing? It's been quite a while. Glad to be back. Before we move forward, I'd like to ask that you subscribe down below, because we're going to be bringing you more content like this, as well as more content from Zach and stuff that's rooted around synthesizers and drum machines and pro audio that we can actually get our hands on. But we're shifting gears a little bit, and we're talking a little more about some of the music that's influenced us. And today I'm going to talk about 5 dance or techno records that I find to be of historical importance and that really, really mean a lot to me. So let's go ahead and move forward and talk about some of these dance records, how they were made, and why they are important. Here we go. So the first record I'm going to talk about, I don't actually own a copy of. In fact, I don't own any of her records, which to me is kind of weird. Maybe I have a 45 somewhere or a 7-inch single, but I want to talk about I Feel Love by Donna Summer. And while I'm discussing this, you can look at my wonderful OMD t-shirt for the song Electricity, which was originally released by Factory Records in Manchester, England. But I digress. So why is the Donna Summer song I Feel Love so historically important? Well, it came out in 1977. So this is way before MIDI, right? We're still dealing with the world of Moog synthesizers, these gigantic modular beasts, as well as the Mini Moog, and some other Moogs had been made by this point as well. There's quite a few, and we also had ARP and Oberheim entering the market. But this record was produced using a Moog and a human being playing a kick drum, which is the only human element on the record. It was recorded using only 16 tracks. And it was kind of a nightmare for them to do this because I Feel Love has this steady pulse to it, right? It's being sequenced, but the problem with the recording is that every 20 to 30 seconds, the synth would start to drift out of tune. So they'd have to stop the synth, they'd have to stop the tape machine, and they'd start over. And it's a pretty long song. I think the single edit's about 4 minutes long. There's versions out there that are like 8, 9, 10 minutes. But think about, you're trying to get a 4 to 5 minute song, single recorded, using primitive electronic equipment, right? That's going out of tune every 20 to 30 seconds. And this was a labor of love. They were trying to create something new. This is the era of disco. Disco is using all, acoustic instruments that are being played by real human beings as opposed to fake human beings, right? But they're creating something new. And when Donna and Giorgio Moroder was the producer on this, and for those of you that aren't familiar with him, he was instrumental in creating the sound of electronic dance music. So much so that on Daft Punk's last record, they invited him into the recording session and wrote a song called Giorgio. Very important. But anyhow, trying to get a 4 to 5 minute song done when you're having to reset everything every 20 to 30 seconds is going to take a long time. And when you're trying to punch things in manually on a tape machine, that's going to take even longer, because you need to make sure that these things are syncing up. As well as if you start doing tape edits, you need to make sure these tape edits are clean so you're not destroying parts of the recording that have taken God knows how many hours to lay down to tape. This song was so influential, was so important, that when Brian Eno heard it, legend has it that he told David Bowie that he heard the future of music, and this was going to change music. The sound of this record, Donna Summer and Giorgio Moroder, for the next 15 years. And Brian Eno was right. And I'm going to tell you why as we move down the line with my records. So Donna Summer, I Feel Love. Take it for a spin. Shake your butt if you need to. It's a killer jam. Number 2, Africa, Bambaataa, and the Soulsonic Force, Planet Rock. This is the greatest breakdance jam ever. This along with Numbers by Kraftwerk, which Numbers influenced this song, right? Now, this is a Record Store Day reissue. I have an OG copy at home on Tommy Boy. I'm not going to take that outside if I don't have to. But this was the birth of electro. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that term electro. And I know that I used the term techno earlier as well, and I'm using that term techno to kind of cover all the different genres and facets of electronic music. But this is the first electro record. Heavy on the 808, heavy on the Moog. This record is so kick-ass. It's like nearly impossible for me not to get up and pop and lock with my old broken bones whenever I hear this. I suck at it, but I still try, even at almost 50 years old, because it's such a wonderful, wonderful song. 1982, produced over a period of 3 nights using a borrowed 808 drum machine, and a couple of other keyboard players came in because I guess Arthur Baker, the producer, in Africa weren't very proficient keyboard players. When you hear this track, you're immediately going to notice the feel, which feels kind of like Numbers by Kraftwerk, as well as the keyboard pad or the string riff, which was lifted from Trans Europe Express from Kraftwerk. This record came together because they loved Kraftwerk so much. And in doing so, taking what Kraftwerk had done, they created an entirely new form, new genre of electronic music called electro. Arthur Baker, who produced this once again, will eventually go on to produce an electro song by the group New Order, which we're going to discuss here in a little bit, not the electro tune, but an electro tune by New Order called Confusion, which for me, that's my personal favorite electro song of all time from one of my favorite bands of all time. I absolutely worship New Order and Joy Division. But for those of you that have not heard Planet Rock by Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force, you need to do this immediately because it is going to make you want to move. It's such a great, great song. Tommy Boy released a lot of great, influential, historical, hip-hop, electro, and dance records. I think they eventually went on to release 808 State records, which were 808 State was an acid house group from Manchester, England. Incredibly important in the history of electronic music, but once again, I'm digressing. Planet Rock. Give it a spin, man. Seriously, it's so killer. Number 3, New Order, Blue Monday. Who has not heard this song? This is still, today, the biggest selling 12-inch single of all time. And it came out in 1983. This changed everything. I will fight you to the death. The importance of this record is immeasurable. The album cover, the sleeve, designed by Peter Saville, one of the founders of Factory Records. It cost so much to make this record that they lost money with every copy that they sold because it was more about the art. And that was the wonderful thing about Factory Records. It was about the art. It was about the packaging. It was about the music. It was everything that went into what Factory Records did. It was always about the art and the expression, what you were trying to get the point you were trying to get across. Excuse me, I'm a little discombobulated because I love this record so much it's hard for me to discuss it because it's the greatest. The greatest. They used an Oberheim drum machine, Moog Source for the bass part. They actually lifted a Kraftwerk sample, the choral part, from Radioactivity Uranium, I believe. It's not that this really hadn't been done because we talked about Donna Summer, and this in many ways has that same type of pulse to it. It's just they blended all the elements together perfectly. Now we're talking about a band that three years earlier was coming out of the death of Ian Curtis, Joy Division. Joy Division was not a happy electronic band. That was, I don't like using the term goth, but they were a goth band. But here we are 3 years later. New Order creates this masterpiece. And really, it was an experiment. The reason New Order did this, because they didn't want to play encores. They wanted to create something that they could actually step on the stage and press a button and and walk off. We're done. We've already played. You don't need an encore. But it birthed this, and it changed everything moving forward. For the band, for dance culture, for techno, it just completely shattered everybody's expectations of what dance music could be. And it existed, you had Gary Newman. I think at one point Gary Newman had 3 LPs that were in the British top 20. It was darker when you think about Cars and Our Friends Electric, but it hadn't really been done like this. This was robot rock. It was just so cool. And the packaging, like this color code down the side, is actually code for Blue Monday New Order. For those of you that don't know how to decipher this, I'm going to let you go ahead and find that. Find that on the internet. Go down that rabbit hole and figure out what all this stuff means, because Peter Saville used this for a lot of New Order releases, as well as From the Hip from Section 25, which included the dance hit Looking from a Hilltop, which was produced by, or helped produced by some of the members of New Order. Anyhow, super important. You need to hear it. I actually brought another version. This is Blue Monday 95. This song has been released a gazillion times with different edits. Even Quincy Jones of all people, remixed this song. And when New Order asked him to remix the song, Quincy said, "I don't know what I can do to it. It's perfect." That's Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones is saying this. I don't know how else to get the point across. Again, I'll fight you to the death. This is the most important dance record ever made. I'm really going out of control here. Maybe we need to move forward to something else. Let's do that. Number 4, Acid House is born. Trax Records, Acid Tracks, Future, DJ Pierre. It's 1987. I believe in another video that I did, the 303, I might have said 1985, and somebody was like, "You're wrong." And you know what? They actually started working on this in 1985. That's when they got the idea to start incorporating the 303 into their music to create something new. And so here we are, Acid Tracks, DJ Pierre, or Future. 1987 was when it got released. Another primitive recording. Everything that I've talked about today, again, all recorded on tape. Right? Recording on tape. Some of this stuff is pre-MIDI. It really, really took a lot of work to make these things happen. This, however, was purely accidental. And what they wanted to achieve was they wanted to try to create something new. And there was another early Acid House song. The name escapes me, and I have it on my computer, so I'm going to look real fast because I can't remember all of it. I certainly try. I've Lost Control by Sleazy D, which was considered to be the first Acid House song pressed to vinyl, but that song did not get the type of traction that this did. And this eventually created the foundation for Acid House music in the UK. And it's just them farting around on a 303 trying to figure out how it works. But it creates this hypnotic, squelching tone, which most of us are familiar with today, especially those of us that really, really like Acid House music. And, it influenced everybody from Aphex Twin, Luke Vibert, 808 State, a guy called Gerald, who originally was an 808 State. And if you can find those early 808 State records, New Build and the original versions of Pacific, you're going to hear that influence. The influence from this record on those albums. Early Aphex Twin stuff, if you can find the Analoid stuff, holy cow, that stuff will melt your brain. It's such high energy, freaked out acid house music. You really, really should seek this stuff out and listen to it, because to really understand the history and where these sounds have come from, you got to go back to this. You got to go back to Trax Records and hear all these really, really cool early house records and acid house records that they produced. And then you start to, then you start to hear like, oh, I can hear where Daft Punk came from, or Bentley Rhythm Ace, or the Chemical Brothers, and all these electronic groups that were fed this stuff. And once again, with many things in the United States, we will create a form of music and then it gets over to the UK or to Germany or Belgium, and they just they run off with it, they go amok with it, and they start creating stuff that is so cool. And it doesn't just, begin and start with acid house. Also, you have the new beat or the EBM movement with groups like Knights Ebb and DAF and Edwards and Armani, which is a great early acid house track. Acid Drill. Seek that out. It's really, really cool. But this is kind of the starting point for what we all consider acid house today. Acid tracks by Future. You really, really need to check this out. It's a killer jam. And last on my list today is Orbital's Chime. Orbital are giants in the techno scene. And once again, I'm using techno as a very, very broad term that covers everything from acid house to trance to deep house, whatever. Techno is a term that was used a lot when I was younger. I still use it today. A lot of people still use it to describe electronic music as just a kind of a broad, like just saying rock and roll and not saying like, oh, it's thrash metal or, new metal or post-rock. Just techno is kind of like saying rock and roll for electronic music. At least it is for me. So here we are, number 5, Orbital, Chime, recorded to cassette, the original release before the FFRR release. This is actually a DJ promo of this song from 1990 when it got reissued. The original release, or the original song, the original cut was recorded to cassette in basically a bored out staircase cupboard in the Hartnell brothers' parents' home. That's how they got their start, right? I mean, what else can you say? Because in 1994, Orbital were the headliners for the Glastonbury Festival, which is the biggest music festival in the world. They were the headliners, an electronic group. 80,000 tickets sold to that event. Orbital headlines. I don't know how many times I can say headlines or headliner. This, for me, is kind of the birth of trance music. And trance music today, for me, I find it very, very boring. It's very formulaic, and there's always some sort of, breakdown and some sort of like drop, and it just doesn't do much for me. But back then, Chime, Satan, Belfast, Halcyon, they had so many bangers, and it all started here with this, Chime. Seek out this recording, the original version, and then listen to their first 2 records, the Green Album and the Brown Album. That's what they're commonly referred to as Orbital 1 or Orbital 2, and all the early singles. And they have such a distinct sound and such a knack for melody and counterpoint that you don't hear with a lot of electronic dance groups. But these guys have done it. I believe that they recently scored this Netflix show called The Pentaverate with Mike Myers, and I watched about 10 minutes of it and just couldn't make it through it. It was so bad and schlocky. However, Orbital's music is always the best. And they've done other film and soundtrack work as well. They were featured in the Spawn soundtrack. They were featured, actually they retooled the music for The Saint when Val Kilmer made that film back in, 92, 93, I can't remember when it was made. Maybe it was a little bit later than that. I've seen these guys countless times. Every time I walk out of an Orbital show, my mind is blown. They do everything live. They wear jeweler's glasses with the lights on the sides so they can see what they're doing on their mixers in real time. At one point, they had like laser pointers on there. So as the brothers are bobbing their heads, they've got lasers coming off of them. They're mixing everything in real time. They are arranging their sequences in real time. They are sweeping filters, manipulating LFOs. They're doing everything in real time. These guys perform. They don't step up to a table, hit play on their transport, and then just do this. Orbital performs. This record smokes. 1989, me and a couple of friends of mine, in 1989 or 1990, 91, when I was a senior in high school, we would spin records around here in San Antonio, because I grew up in San Antonio, something that I don't say a whole lot, but I grew up here. And we would go out and spin records for private parties, and we would include Orbital and early Prodigy when they were doing like fast jungle beats. We were playing that stuff here in our little town of San Antonio back in the early 90s, actually at the beginning of the 90s, and watch people freak out. This group Orbital really means a lot to me, and this 1 through 5, the order that I did this in, and I did this before with another video. I did it in order of year made, not necessarily importance to me. All these records are important, but anyhow, I'm digressing once again because I get really passionate when I start talking about the music that I love. Orbital, Chime, check out what they've done. You're gonna get caught in a rabbit hole. They actually have a new compilation coming out, and they have Stephen Hawking on a song, and that song is really, really cool. So anyhow, Orbital, Chime. So that's it for my top 5, most influential techno dance records, whatever, however you want to label it. I know everybody's going to have their comments down below, which is great. Let's keep it nice. Let's be kind to each other. We all have our own opinions. This is all very subjective, but these records are all historically important to me and to many others in the music community, especially when we're talking about Donna Summer and New Order. That they just launched so much and spun so many heads around. But I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are and electronic records that are important to you and why they are important to you. What kind of influence do they have on you? I want to say it one more time. All these records were recorded to tape. There was no digital recording technology, or at least affordable digital recording technology at the time. So all this stuff was recorded to multi-track tape, and then, of course, in the case of Orbital, to a cassette tape. I want you to remember that next time you're working a part out on your iPhone or your iPad that you're going to fly into Ableton or Fruity Loops or whatever DAW it is that you use, because you couldn't do that. I mean, just up until a few years ago, you really couldn't do that. So it's important to know that today, for us that are creating electronic music, hip hop, EDM, techno, whatever you want to call it, whatever genre you're working in, a lot of this has allowed for the technology to grow and to make it easier for you to create the things that you hear in your head. So I'm going to stop here. We will do more of these. Once again, if you haven't subscribed, please do so down below. If you want to know a little bit more about my universe, you can go to civilianaudio.com. Maybe I will update my site again soon. It's been a while, but anyhow, you can find a little more about me and what it is that I do. Let's all be kind to each other. Let's keep on creating. Let's keep talking about all this great music. And until then, I'll see you later. Keep on creating, be kind, and let's do it again. Thanks. Bye.